Hey everyone, welcome to Messiah Nation, to our Wednesday Why. Doesn't have to be Wednesday when you watch this, but it is Wednesday as I'm recording it. So we talk about why we believe what we believe. And tonight we are going to talk about Jesus breaking the law, right? But did he? So like, subscribe, pass these videos along if they're helping you. We're going to talk about this tonight and use an example that some people like to use and talk about if that's actually what happened. So jumping right into it here, we'll ask the question, can you personally think of a time where Jesus, Yeshua, broke the law of God that is sometimes referred to as the law of Moses? If so, how could he be the Messiah? How could he be the Messiah and have broken the law of God? And do you have any examples you can think of off the top of your head? Well, we're going to look at one specific one tonight, but there are a few other ones that people like to use, especially people that are not believers, and they like to point these things out as holes in Scripture. There really are explanations for all of them if we know what we're doing with the Scripture. So let's look at these. We're going to look at John chapter 8. It says this, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives early in the morning, and he came again into the temple, and all the people were coming to him, and he sat down and began to teach them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman caught in adultery, and having set her in the center of the court, they said to him, Teacher, this woman has been caught in adultery in the very act. Listen to what it says here in verse 5. Now, in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. What then do you say? Okay, so it appears here in verse 5, we have a very clear commandment from the law, that in the law, it states that we are supposed to stone women who are caught in the act of adultery. So what does Jesus say? Of course, he's going to agree with it, right? If it's in the law, he can't disagree with it, because that would make him a heretic. Let's look at what it says. They were saying this, first of all, they were testing him, right? So that they might have grounds for accusing him, because if he disagrees with the law, there is the grounds for accusing him. But instead, Jesus stooped down with his finger, wrote on the ground. But when they persisted in asking him, he straightened up and said to them, He who is without sin among you, let him be the first to throw a stone at her. So we appear potentially to have a big problem here, because Jesus, Yeshua, he did not uphold the law in the way that it was written. So how can this be okay? Because it's the law of God. He changed the law. It seems this way, right? It seems like he blatantly contradicts the law. He doesn't allow them to go through what they say Moses instructed them. Now, is that what's actually happening here, or is there more to the story? Well, let's look at the law that they are referring to. So we can go to Leviticus chapter 20, beginning in verse 10, and it says this. If there is a man who commits adultery with another man's wife, one who commits adultery with his friend's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. If there is a man who lies with his father's wife, he has uncovered his father's nakedness. Both of them shall surely be put to death. Okay, so we see something here that's not happening in the story. Let me give you another reference here in Deuteronomy 22. If a man is found lying with a married woman, then both of them shall die, the man who lay with the woman and the woman. Thus you shall purge the evil from Israel. Verse 23, if there is a girl who is a virgin engaged to a man, and another man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of the city, and you shall stone them. Hey, that didn't happen either. So we have a couple of things going on here that are pretty interesting, and this is, I want to interject a little point here. This is why we need to read and study Scripture for ourselves. Because it appears here that the Pharisees know the law, right? And they're telling Yeshua, The law of Moses tells us we've got to stone her because she was caught in the act of adultery. But that is not all that the law said. And there was a lot more to this law than what they are saying, what they are quoting, just like Satan did. Remember when he came to Yeshua in the desert, in the wilderness, and he said, he quotes scripture, but he doesn't quote it in context. He doesn't get the full picture of what's going on. Okay, so but let's take one more look at this. Straightening up, Jesus said in verse 10 to her, "Woman, who are they? Did no one condemn you?" And she said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said, "I do not condemn you either. Go, from now on, sin no more." So again, we see here that it seems like potentially Jesus is not upholding the law or what he's supposed to do. But could it be that, because here, listen, he knows the law. He showed us how to live the law perfectly. So he knows that you need this other part that's in Deuteronomy 19 to be able to do this. A single witness shall not rise up against a man on account of an iniquity or any sin which he has committed. There has to be evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses, a matter, with the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses shall a matter be confirmed. So he knows, man, Yeshua knows the law. He knew that in what they were bringing to him was an incomplete picture of the law. We could go through this in a bunch of different ways, but here's the reality of what took place. They did not fulfill the full picture of what was supposed to be done in this passage. So it wasn't simply that this woman was caught in the act of adultery. We don't know whether she was or not. We have an accusation, but we have no witnesses. We have the woman, but we don't have the man. We have a bunch of people who are looking to trap Jesus in his words to see if he'll contradict Moses, but we don't have a lot of the pieces that they're supposed to have to be able to carry out this, we'll call it what it is, this execution, this punishment, right? And Yeshua, Jesus, he knows this, okay? So in actuality, he's upholding the law perfectly. It's the other people that are not upholding the law, which is very interesting because they should have known, and they did know. So let's explore this a little deeper. What is he writing in the sand? Okay, what's going on here? Well, let's look at a few scriptures. First of all, we understand in Exodus 31, we see a picture of the first time the finger of God is writing. It says in verse 18, when he had finished speaking with him, Moses, on Mount Sinai, he gave Moses the 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone written by the finger of God. Okay, so here we just read where Yeshua, Jesus, is bending down into the sand and he's writing something in the sand. But here we know that the very laws that they are saying this woman broke were written by the finger of God on tablets for Moses to give to the people. So I want to give you a little bit of Hebrew history, okay? And we're going to tie this together here. This is stuff you can go look up for yourself in the Mishnah and in other places, but this is Hebrew history, things that we know. First of all, we understand that when this type of sin was committed, both the man and the woman would be brought to, in the Second Temple period, they would be brought to the Nicanor Temple gates and accused. So again, they would be, the man and the woman both were brought to this particular gate. This is something that a lot of people have not studied and don't understand the implications of this. This is why people walk away from the faith, because there's this passage about stoning your children. Listen, there's a temple gate system of judgment that has to be followed in all of these cases that's written down in the law. But unfortunately, like we just talked about earlier, people have not read the law for themselves. They just go over what other people say. And we don't really understand the finer points of the Torah, of the law, okay, and the prophets. So this is the first thing that has to happen. So you have them being accused, first of all. Then secondly, The witnesses also have to gather to confirm the accusation, and there must be at least 2 witnesses present. Okay, now 3 is better. You can have more, but you don't need more than 2 or 3 at the particular gate. You can call on them later if the stories don't match up. But this is the way this was dealt with in the actual Second Temple period, okay, which is when Yeshua would have been walking the earth. This is what's interesting, and you can go look this up. Go fact check me on this if you want to. But the priest then would stoop down. Okay, so this is particularly talking about this issue now has been brought before the priest, and the priest would stoop down and they would write in the sand of the temple floor or by the gate. They would write down the names of the accused and the law that had been broken. Okay, so they would write with their finger in the sand or somewhere on the temple floor or on the city gate floor the names of the accused and the laws that they had broken. So this is very interesting because we've got 3 strikes here, because these people that were bringing the woman who was accused did not do any of these, but one part of the story was done. You've got 3 things that needed to take place. The accused needed to bring the man and the woman. They needed to have the witnesses there, and the priest was supposed to be officiating. None of these 3 happened except for one. You had the high priest, our high priest, the one who would become our high priest, Yeshua, who bent down and began to write in the sand, potentially recalling to their memory what was supposed to happen as they did this particular thing. Now, we don't know, he could have been at, close to the temple because he was teaching, things of that sort, but we clearly don't have the witnesses. We clearly don't have the other individual involved in this. So they're not following the procedure outlined for them in the Torah. Okay. Now I'm going to give you another piece of this. So we have Yeshua, though, who is fulfilling the role of the high priest, and he is bending down and he's writing something in the sand. What is he writing? Is he writing her name and the sin that she's accused of? Well, let's look at another passage that is read during Yom Kippur, okay, the Day of Atonement. This is a verse that's always read. And all of these people would have heard this read over and over throughout Yom Kippur for their entire lives. So, at least from age 21 when they went to these festivals, okay? So Jeremiah 17, verse 13 says, O Lord, the hope of Israel, all who forsake you will be put to shame. Those who turn away on earth will be written down, because they have forsaken the fountain of living water, even the Lord. Okay, so we have this. This is speaking potentially even of those people that have come who had turned away from the ways of God because they are not following protocol here. We just saw that. And you have them, those who turn away, they will be written down. Okay. Now, could this be a prophetic passage of what's happening in John chapter 8? Well, let me read this to you. If you literally translate the Hebrew, okay, not just trying to make it sound nice, but literally translating the Hebrew, it would say this: O Yehovah, or Yahweh, or Yahava, or however you want to pronounce the tetragrammaton there, the immerser, baptizer of Israel, all those who leave your way shall be put to shame. And the implication there is a public embarrassment. And those who turn aside from my ways will have their names written in the dust and blotted out, for they have departed from Yahweh, the fountain of Mayim Hayim, the waters of life. Okay, so this is exactly what this would say if we literally translated it in Hebrew. So here's my question for you. Perhaps what's taking place here is that the finger of God that wrote the commandments is now in the incarnation. The high priest Yeshua, the one who would be our high priest, is now writing down in the sand. Maybe he's not writing her name and her sin. Maybe he's writing the accusers that brought her, Maybe he's writing their names and the sins that they've committed by not following the procedure that was supposed to take place. Pretty interesting turn of events here, potentially. And go decide for yourself. I'm not telling you it is or isn't this way, but it's just an interesting shift in this particular story. But it does show us that Yeshua did not break the law. He's the one that's actually following through with this. Now, I want to bring up one more verse, and we're going to end with this. That is another instance of Jesus, Yeshua, or the Father writing something down that is pretty interesting that we should take a look at. So in Jeremiah 31, beginning in verse 31, it says, "Behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah." Okay, so we've got to be in one of those houses, apparently, or else we don't get to be part of the new covenant. Not like the covenant which I made with their fathers in the day I took them by the hand and brought them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant which they broke, although I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. Now that was partially the covenant that was written by his finger on stone. But look at what it says when we get to verse 33. "But this is the covenant which I make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them, and on their heart I will write it, and I will be their God, and they will be my people." So now we have another instance where God is writing something down, where there's something being written down. And here's what's amazing. He is writing his law on our hearts, not our sin in the sand. So I just wanted to bring that up because I know I've run across lots of people that want to say, well, Jesus broke the law because he did not follow through with the law of Moses. On the contrary, he was the one that actually was following through with the law of Moses and upholding the law, while these other accusers were not doing what they were supposed to do. So did Jesus break the law? You can see his response there. No, I didn't. He didn't break the law. It was the accusers that broke the law. So hopefully that clears up a few things that maybe you've been asked about or you've had questions about yourself. Yeah, that's what I got for you tonight. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your week.